Earlier this year, Lynn Dolan, the AMO president, announced a municipal proposal to raise the HST by 1%. These dollars would help fund critical local services and infrastructure in communities across the province. This video will help you understand some of the basics. I'll talk about why it is necessary, what some of the alternatives are, and how it would work. Let's begin. Let's start with the process. The subtitle you see here, Imagining a Prosperous Future for Our Communities, represents what we have endeavored to do through the What's Next Ontario and local share process. What's Next Ontario is a project that we began in the spring of 2015, and it represents one of the most ambitious engagements this association has undertaken in the last 10 years. We thoroughly discussed financial issues with municipal leaders in dozens and dozens of meetings in all corners of the province. This process has included 3 specific phases. The first phase was to talk about some of the challenges municipalities face individually and the fiscal realities that we face together as a sector. The second phase explored what some of the solutions might be. And the third phase, which is where we are now, is to present the leading option to achieve sustainability, which has been unanimously endorsed by AMO's Board of Directors. In terms of what guided this discussion, above all else, we needed to be strategic and forward-thinking to modernize municipal finances. We needed to capture the diversity of municipalities across Ontario with flexible options that are accountable and transparent to the public. We had to consider options that represented good public and fiscal policy. We needed to be fair and equitable to the taxpayer. And above all else, we needed to come up with solutions that are sustainable for the long term, both for municipalities and for the provincial government. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? To deliver existing services and close the infrastructure gap, every year for the next 10 years, municipalities will need an extra $4.9 billion. That $4.9 billion is on top of inflationary increases to property taxes and user fees. It also assumes that all existing federal and provincial commitments are fulfilled over the next 10 years, including cost share programs and infrastructure. This is a substantial number when you look at it sector-wide. That means we had to consider a broad range of options to close the gap. In total, we looked at 44 different options. This included areas where the province could help municipalities deliver services at a reduced cost. We've asked for these changes, but none have happened, and we've been trying for several years. We measured each of these options against a standard set of criteria, including how much revenue each could generate, the impact on specific geographic areas, and we boiled these down to one leading option. That leading option is a 1% municipal sales tax, which would help fund critical local services like roads, bridges, and transit. It would help reduce the upward pressure on property tax bills and diversify how we fund local communities. The sales tax is used in other parts of the world to fund municipalities, including in 25 states south of the border. It is a well-respected and well-used tool. How does this idea line up against the other leading options? The first option is a property tax increase. Using the property tax to close the $4.9 billion gap would require an 8% revenue increase per year for 10 years. Of course, Ontarians already pay the highest property taxes in the country. We have to ask some pretty realistic questions about whether those increases are achievable or even desirable. It would mean that a person paying $3,000 a year in property taxes in 2015 would be paying almost $6,700 by 2025. Another natural option is to ask the provincial government for further uploads. In terms of what that option looks like, it is true that the provincial government balanced its books this year. However, we have to acknowledge that the provincial debt exceeds $341 billion this year. The Provincial Financial Accountability Officer, who is independent of government and reports to the legislature, has indicated that there will be a steady deterioration in the budget deficit going forward. So, against this backdrop, municipal governments have to ask, what is the likelihood in getting more financial assistance from the province? So this is a little bit of the history of how we've arrived at this bigger and bolder option. Let me walk you through some of the basics of what the local share could mean. It would increase the provincial portion of the sales tax by 1% province-wide. We pay 13% now. This would increase the sales tax rate to 14%. In the recent past, Ontarians have paid 15%. After providing rebates for low-income Ontarians and administration costs, we believe this produces an estimated $2.5 billion annually, about half of the gap that we identified. These dollars would be collected provincially and redistributed to all municipalities based on an allocation formula. I'll talk about that formula in a moment. What are some of the key merits of this proposal? There are four. Number one, it diversifies municipal revenues. It would close the infrastructure gap and provide for local needs. Number two, it means less municipal vulnerability to provincial and federal policy change. Three, it means more predictable long-term infrastructure planning and financing at the local level. And four, finally, it is a more progressive option. It reduces upward pressure on property tax rates. Of course, as you know, how much property tax an individual pays has no bearing on how much income they have. In terms of our allocation approach, our starting point is the distribution of $2.5 billion to 444 municipal governments. We used a sliding scale per household to do that. It treats every municipality the same way as they move through the scale. In a two-tier situation, the per household allocation is divided between the two. The share of upper tier own source revenue is used as a proxy for service responsibilities. For example, if County X has 45% of the revenues for all municipalities in that county, it would get 45% of the new revenue. Here's the sliding scale per household model. All of the allocations for every municipality are posted on AMO's website. I'll give you the link to those allocations at the end of my presentation. We use the same model for all municipalities across the province. What are we asking? First off, we're asking to try on the idea, to see how it fits, and to focus on the concept of what it would mean to diversify revenues. Number two, how does the local share align with your local needs? That's a conversation that you need to have. And third, if you're not sure, please ask or read through some of the 3 reports that we have prepared. And finally, let us know what you think. We welcome the support of councils and the public. To conclude, all of the reports that I have referenced are available here at the link that you see on the screen. It also includes videos of recent conference presentations, which includes polling completed by Nick Nanos. AMO commissioned Nick Nanos at 3 different times over the course of the last year and a half to get a reading of how Ontarians feel about these issues. At each poll, Nick asked 1,000 Ontarians from all corners of the province what they thought of these proposals. In all 3 polls, a majority of Ontarians were in favor of raising the HST by 1% if it went to municipalities to fix infrastructure. As a matter of fact, the last poll conducted in June of this year, the percentage of Ontarians who supported the local share increased to 73%. 73% of Ontarians are in favor of this option. Ontario's municipal governments are perceived as being the most responsive order of government. Ontarians have an intimate understanding of what those local needs are, in large part because they live that experience on a daily basis. These numbers are a strong voice of encouragement for municipal governments from the public. They have told us that they are willing to consider a big and bold option. I invite you to consider what the local share could mean for your community. Thank you.